My name is Elena Voss. I'm 34 years old, and 3 days before Christmas, my father arrived at my new manor with a locksmith, a forged lease, and the confidence of a man who had never been told no. "You can't stop us," he called through the front door as the locksmith positioned his drill against my antique brass lock. My mother stood behind him recording everything, while my younger brother carried 2 suitcases as if they had already moved in. My father raised the fake lease toward the security camera. "This proves we have the right to live here. Open the door, Elena, or we'll open it ourselves." I stood inside the dark entrance hall, watching them through 6 hidden camera feeds. They believed the house was empty. They had no idea 2 police officers were waiting in the library. 3 investigative reporters were sitting silently in my dining room, or that the locksmith had already been warned that the document in my father's hand was evidence in a fraud investigation. I pressed the intercom. "Go ahead," I said. "Break the door." My father smiled. That smile disappeared less than a minute later. For 31 Christmases, my parents forgot my gifts, excluded me from photographs, and told relatives I was too busy to visit. Then I bought a manor without their help, and suddenly they remembered exactly where their daughter lived. But taking my house was only one part of their plan. What they had done with my identity 2 years earlier was far worse, and when the truth came out inside that dark house, something unthinkable happened. Before I tell you what my father said, and what happened after the lock broke, tell me, what time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story travels. To understand why my parents believed they could seize my home, you need to understand how carefully they had erased me long before that morning. My father's favorite weapon was not anger, it was revision. He could take something cruel he had done, retell it 6 months later, and transform himself into the victim. My mother supplied the tears. My brother supplied the agreement. By the time I was 20, every painful memory I carried had an approved family version in which I was unstable, ungrateful, or confused. Every Christmas, my father recorded a family video diary beside the fireplace. The recordings looked warm, but what happened before and after them was different. When I was 11, my parents forgot to buy me a gift. My mother removed a scarf from her own box, wrapped it again, and told me it had always been mine. In the video, she claimed I had refused to open my presents because I was going through a dramatic phase. When I was 16, they left for a Christmas ski trip without telling me the departure time. I woke to an empty house and a note asking me to feed the cat. In that year's video, my father said I had refused to travel because I wanted to stay with friends. I had no friends in town. I ate canned soup alone for 3 days while snow covered the driveway. At 22, I brought 4 framed illustrations to Christmas dinner. My father had invited a business partner who asked who I was. Before I could answer, my father laughed. "That's Elena. She disappears for years, then comes back when there's free food." Everyone laughed. I had been living 15 minutes away and calling my mother every Sunday. Have you ever wondered why a child must prove she deserves to be remembered by the people who created her? I stopped correcting their stories because every correction became another accusation. If I said they forgot me, my mother cried. If I mentioned the ski trip, my father called me vindictive. If I showed a message proving they excluded me, my brother said I was obsessed with the past. Silence became the price of remaining in the family, and I paid it until I was 29. That year, my father's development company began collapsing. He had built luxury vacation properties with loans secured against unstable assets. My younger brother, Nathan, joined the company after dropping out of business school. He had no qualifications, yet my father gave him a senior title, a company car, and access to corporate accounts. Nathan used those accounts for gambling trips, watches, and a failed cryptocurrency investment. At Christmas dinner, my father praised Nathan for carrying the family legacy, then asked whether my art was still a hobby. I had illustrated two best-selling books, designed a hotel mural, and worked overnight on an international advertising campaign. I had also sent my parents $12,000 when my mother claimed the company could not cover employee health insurance. None of that mattered. Nathan could consume everything and remain the golden child. I could rescue everyone and remain the disappointment. My usefulness depended on accepting humiliation. That night, I drove home, opened a blank document, and titled it, "The Letter I Will Never Send." I wrote, "Dear Mom and Dad, I spent my life trying to become memorable to people committed to forgetting me. I am done auditioning for a place in my own family." I saved it and added to it every Christmas afterward. Then I disappeared from their system. I changed my number, closed the joint account my mother had convinced me to keep, froze my credit, and moved my business records to a private mailbox. My mother sent 2 messages about my attitude. My father left one voicemail warning that isolation was a symptom of mental illness. Nathan wrote only once, "If you're not coming for Christmas, send Mom money for the catering." Over the next 5 years, I worked harder than I thought possible. I painted commercial murals during the day, illustrated book covers at night, and sold limited prints online. I lived in a small apartment with unreliable heat and converted the bedroom into a studio, sleeping on a fold-out couch beside the kitchen. Every dollar had a purpose. I paid off my loans, created an emergency fund, and invested carefully. Larger commissions followed, then a hotel group hired me to create installations across 4 states. I did not become wealthy overnight. I became independent one invoice at a time. By the time I found the manor outside Sedona, I had a substantial down payment, clean credit, and a stable business. The property had belonged to a reclusive sculptor. It contained 12 rooms, a detached studio, a library, courtyards, and unfinished galleries. It was impressive enough to be called a mansion, but neglected enough to scare away most buyers. I saw something else. A home no one had prepared for Nathan. I purchased the manor through a company created for my art business. That decision was not paranoia. It was protection, and Marcus Hale had taught me the difference. Marcus and I had known each other since high school. He was the only person outside my family who witnessed what happened during the Christmas ski trip. His mother lived nearby, and when he saw me shoveling snow alone on Christmas morning, he invited me to dinner. I lied and said my parents had been delayed by weather. He knew, but he never embarrassed me. We lost contact during college and reconnected years later at one of my exhibitions. By then, he was an attorney specializing in property disputes and financial fraud. When I told him I wanted to buy the manor, he reviewed every page, organized the title search, and insisted that all records remain separate from any address my parents knew. "You are not being paranoid," he said. "You are responding to a pattern." The sale closed in October. I did not post it online or tell relatives. I told only my contractors, 2 friends, Marcus, and my gallery director. For the first month, I repaired plumbing, updated the electrical system, and converted the western wing into a studio. The manor was more than a personal reward. I planned to establish an artist's residency for women rebuilding after financial or emotional abuse. The guest rooms would become temporary housing. The ballroom would host exhibitions. A portion of every sale would fund legal consultations and relocation grants. I wanted freedom to have rooms for other people too. Then an envelope arrived at my private mailbox. It contained a photocopy of a loan agreement supposedly signed by me 2 years earlier. According to the document, I had guaranteed a $1.8 million commercial loan for my father's company. The signature resembled mine, but the middle initial was wrong, and the listed address belonged to an apartment I had left 7 years earlier. A handwritten note was attached. "Call your father before this becomes embarrassing." I called Marcus instead. Within hours, he requested the public filings. By the next afternoon, We knew the guarantee had been notarized by an employee of my father's company and submitted during refinancing. My father had used my identity to make his business appear less risky. The lender believed I was a silent partner. I had never owned a single share. Marcus told me not to contact my family. We reported the suspected forgery, filed an identity theft report, and preserved everything. 2 weeks later, my father called from an unfamiliar number. "Elena, we need to resolve a misunderstanding. I never signed a loan guarantee." There was a pause. "You've always had a selective memory." I recorded the call. He claimed I had signed papers during a family dinner but could not remember the year or the notary. When I pointed out that the address was false, he accused me of trying to destroy the company Nathan would inherit. The company's main commercial property was approaching foreclosure, and my forged guarantee had delayed the collapse. Nathan had also borrowed heavily against company assets. If the lender invalidated my signature, everything would unravel. 3 days later, my mother called. She said my father was under stress. Nathan was still young, and family members sometimes signed documents without understanding every detail. Then she asked whether I owned property that could temporarily support the refinancing. I said no. She sighed. "Your history of anxiety could complicate matters if this becomes legal." What does anxiety have to do with forgery? People may question your memory. There it was. The forgotten daughter would become the unreliable daughter. If I accused them, they would say I was unstable. If I resisted, they would claim I could not manage my own affairs. Marcus helped me collect certified medical records, credit reports, contracts, and closing documents. We installed cameras with audio at every entrance, motion sensors across the driveway, and remote backups. Then a magazine photographed my restored studio. The article did not list my address, but the exterior was distinctive. 2 days later, a landscaping truck remained across the road for an hour. The next morning, a drone flew over my courtyard. A week later, Nathan sent me a photograph of the manor. Nice place. Dad says family property should stay in the family. I forwarded it to Marcus and added another line to my unsent letter. "You did not remember where I lived when I needed you. You found me immediately when my life could be converted into collateral." Marcus initially believed my parents would pressure me privately with calls, threats, or a lawsuit. What we discovered was more organized. Nathan had contacted a locksmith in Sedona and claimed he was managing a property owned by our parents. He sent a lease showing my father and mother as lawful tenants of the manor. The document said their tenancy began 6 months before I purchased it, which was impossible, and claimed I had bought the property subject to their rights. The lease carried my forged signature. The locksmith became suspicious because Nathan insisted the work be done while I was away. He searched the ownership records, found my company, and called me. "I may have been given incorrect information about your property," he said. I asked him to send everything. The lease included copied pages from my purchase documents, a counterfeit notary seal, and a letter supposedly written by a physician. It claimed I had episodes of impaired judgment and that my parents were authorized to intervene in housing decisions. The doctor's name belonged to a retired psychiatrist I had seen briefly after college. The letter was also forged. My parents planned to enter the manor, establish physical occupancy, and claim an existing tenancy. Once inside, they could delay eviction, damage my reputation, and pressure me to transfer control of the property. Even a false dispute could interfere with my insurance, financing, and residency project. The manor was worth more than the remaining equity in their company. If they could use it as collateral, they might delay foreclosure long enough to hide other losses. The locksmith agreed to cooperate. Marcus contacted the county attorney and the lender's fraud team. Because the documents crossed jurisdictions and involved a major loan, the investigation expanded. Detectives asked us not to confront my parents until they knew who created the forgeries. 10 days later, my father sent a certified letter announcing that he and my mother would take possession of their leased residence on December 22nd. He ordered me to remove my belongings from the primary suite and provide keys. Marcus did not laugh. They want you to panic and leave, or physically resist so they can portray you as dangerous. What happens when they come? We document everything, give a clear warning, and let them make their choices in front of witnesses. Investigators designed a controlled confrontation. The locksmith would arrive as scheduled and stop before causing meaningful damage. Officers would remain inside until my father attempted unlawful entry or presented the fraudulent documents as genuine. I agreed, but I wanted reporters present. My father's power depended on controlling the narrative. If the confrontation happened privately, he would later claim I had misunderstood or become hysterical. We invited 3 reporters under confidentiality agreements. One covered corporate crime, another had investigated abusive guardianships, and the third wrote about forged property transfers. I also prepared a live stream through my professional account. I did not intend to activate it unless the confrontation became dangerous or my parents publicly attacked my mental competence. On December 21st, I walked through the manor checking each room. The police would wait in the library. The reporters would sit in the dining room. Marcus would remain nearby. The locksmith wore a camera, and my security system covered every entrance. From outside, the house looked empty. At midnight, I sat in the studio and opened my unsent letter, now 23 pages long. Some passages were angry. Others sounded like a child bargaining with people who had already chosen not to listen. I wrote a final page. Tomorrow, you will tell strangers you came because you love me. You will call theft concern and control protection. This time, I will not argue with your version. I will let everyone watch you create it. At 7 the next morning, a black SUV stopped outside the gates. My father was early. My mother sat beside him. Nathan was in the back with 2 suitcases. A white service van followed them. For one irrational second, I wanted to open the door and ask why they could not simply be proud of me. That question belonged to the girl I had been. The woman I had become activated the cameras. My father knocked once. Elena, we are taking possession today. Do not make this more difficult than necessary. I spoke through the intercom. You do not have permission to enter this property. He immediately turned toward my mother's phone. As you can see, our daughter is refusing access to her lawful tenants. We are concerned about her condition. Nathan handed the fake lease to the locksmith. The owner is emotionally unstable. Our attorney told us not to argue with her. No attorney had reviewed the document. The locksmith examined the pages and asked whether my father was certain the tenancy was valid. My father pointed at the manor. I paid for her entire life. Everything she owns exists because of us. That statement revealed the belief beneath their plan. Raising a child had become permanent ownership of the adult. I warned them that the deed belonged to my company, the lease was fraudulent, and they had to leave. My mother stepped closer to the camera, tears appearing almost instantly. Elena, sweetheart, we only want to keep you safe. Please stop listening to people who are turning you against your family. Behind me, one reporter began writing. My father lost patience. Open it. The locksmith placed his tools near the lock but did not drill. Sir, I need you to confirm on camera that you are authorizing entry and have the legal right to occupy this residence. I confirm it. And you understand the owner has denied permission? She does not have the capacity to deny it. That sentence was the threshold investigators needed. My father had presented the forged lease, asserted its validity, and used a fabricated claim of incapacity to override my ownership. The locksmith touched the drill to the lock without turning it on. I spoke again. Dad, if that door is damaged, there will be no private resolution. He laughed. You can't stop us. Watch me. He ordered the locksmith to proceed. When the man hesitated, Nathan grabbed a metal pry bar from the tool case. Move, I'll do it. He wedged it between the door and frame and pulled. The wood cracked. My mother lowered her phone. Nathan, wait. My father told him to continue. The second pull damaged the restored frame and triggered the alarm. The library doors opened. 2 officers crossed the entrance hall while a detective followed. Marcus entered from the dining room with the reporters. Nathan dropped the pry bar. My father stared from the officers to the cameras. What is this? A documented fraud investigation, Marcus said. You were warned not to enter. My mother began crying harder. We were invited. This is a family misunderstanding. The locksmith raised his hands. I told them the owner denied access. An officer ordered Nathan away from the door and asked my father to place the folder on the ground. He refused. This lease is valid. My daughter is mentally ill. He opened the folder and produced the forged physician's letter. This proves she is not competent to control the property. The detective took it carefully. Did the physician sign this in your presence? My father said it had been delivered through the doctor's office. The detective already possessed a sworn statement confirming the retired doctor had not written it, had not treated me in years, and had never authorized my parents to act for me. My father changed his explanation twice. Nathan began distancing himself. Dad handled the paperwork. I thought it was real. Then I stepped into view. My mother's fear turned to outrage. You set us up. No, I protected my house. You chose what happened next. My father moved toward me, but an officer blocked him. You planned this humiliation after everything we sacrificed. I looked at the broken frame. You tried to enter my home using forged documents. Our home, he snapped. No, that word is exactly what you never gave me. Nathan recognized one of the reporters from a major financial publication. Turn those cameras off. The reporter answered, You attempted to enter a property using documents connected to an active fraud investigation. Nathan turned to me. You're going to destroy my career over a misunderstanding? He had not worried about my career when the false medical letter described me as incompetent. My mother then delivered the betrayal I had expected. Elena has always been jealous of her brother. She fabricated stories as a child. She once claimed we abandoned her on Christmas, but she refused to come with us. The old family version arrived exactly on schedule. This time, I had the original video diary. I played a recovered clip showing my father loading luggage into the car. Don't wake Elena, he said. She'll complain about the cold. She can manage 3 days alone. My mother's voice asked, What if she calls someone? Tell them she chose to stay. 16-year-old Nathan appeared and asked if they should leave me money. My father replied, She needs to learn no one is responsible for her. Nathan laughed. The room fell silent. My mother whispered, That was a joke. I ate alone for 3 days. You always exaggerate. That answer did more damage than any confession could have done. I activated the live stream. The live stream opened through my professional account. At first, only a few hundred people joined. Then viewers recognized the reporters and began sharing the link. Within minutes, thousands were watching. I faced the camera. My family is attempting to enter my home with a forged lease and a false medical letter. Police are present. I am broadcasting because my parents have repeatedly used claims about my mental health to discredit me, and I want an unedited record. My father lunged toward the phone, but an officer stopped him. You have no right to broadcast me. You arrived filming me, I replied. My mother turned off her recording. Nathan pulled out his phone, likely to delete messages, but the detective ordered him not to destroy potential evidence. Marcus explained the timeline. The lease supposedly predated my ownership but contained language copied from documents created months later. The notary seal belonged to an employee of my father's company. The doctor had denied writing the medical letter. The business loan carried the same forged signature. My father interrupted repeatedly. He claimed I authorized everything verbally. Family agreements were informal. The bank understood, and I had promised to support Nathan. Each explanation contradicted the previous one. The detective asked, "If your daughter agreed to guarantee the loan, why did you send documents to an address where she had not lived for 7 years?" My father had no answer. "If she leased this house to you, why did you hire a locksmith and request entry while she was supposedly absent?" He looked at Nathan. Nathan answered first. "I was told she changed the locks illegally." "By whom?" "My father." The golden child had begun sacrificing his king. My father warned him to be careful. Nathan stepped away. "I didn't create the paperwork." "You benefited from the loan," the detective said. "I didn't know it was fraudulent." Marcus opened a binder. "We have messages from your number discussing how Elena's credit would keep the company alive long enough to sell another development." The lender had recovered them from a cloud backup. In one message, Nathan wrote, "She never checks family paperwork. Tell her later if we have to." In another, he asked whether my mental health history could be used if I challenged the signature. My mother stared at him. "You said you weren't involved." Nathan turned on her. "You signed the witness statement." Their united performance collapsed. My mother accused my father of pressuring her. My father accused Nathan of stealing company money. Nathan claimed both parents had planned to move into the manor because selling it could cover their debts. Each tried to escape responsibility by increasing someone else's. The officers separated them. My mother called my name, and for 1 second, she sounded like she had when I was small. "Elena, turn off the broadcast. Think about what this will do to our family." "When you used my name to borrow money, did you think about what it would do to me?" "We were going to fix it before you knew." "When you forged a doctor's letter?" "That was your father's idea." "When you planned to enter my house?" "We needed somewhere to stay." "You own a house. The bank is taking it." There was the truth. They had exhausted their property, credit, and credibility. The daughter they forgot had become their last available asset. "You have so much space," my mother said. "We only needed a few rooms until the company recovered." "Then why make a fake lease?" Her hand dropped. "You would not have agreed." They committed fraud because they viewed my consent as an obstacle instead of a right. The detective arrested my father on suspicion of attempted burglary, forgery-related crimes, criminal impersonation, and conspiracy. Nathan was arrested for attempted unlawful entry and questioned about the financial scheme. My mother was not immediately taken into custody, but officers seized her phone and prohibited her from returning. As my father was escorted outside, he looked into the livestream camera. This is what happens when children are taught they owe nothing to their parents. I stood beside the broken door. No, this is what happens when parents mistake raising a child for purchasing one. That clip spread faster than the original stream. By evening, it had been reposted millions of times. News outlets connected the arrest to the failing company. Former employees spoke about unpaid wages, altered accounts, and suspicious signatures. Vendors released records showing that Nathan had used corporate money for personal expenses. Investors contacted investigators. The story was no longer only about my house. It became the thread that unraveled their entire business. Nathan's employer suspended him, then fired him after discovering he had misrepresented his previous position and concealed financial disputes. My father's company lost its remaining financing. The bank accelerated foreclosure on the family home and several commercial properties. My mother called 16 times that night. I did not answer. Her final voicemail said, "You made your point. Your father may go to prison. Nathan has lost everything. Surely this is enough." She still believed consequences were something I was doing to them. I saved the message and added one sentence to my unsent letter. "You taught me accountability was cruelty whenever it reached someone you loved." The legal consequences did not arrive in one dramatic moment. They came document by document, as every family lie was compared with a record they could no longer control. The lender invalidated the guarantee bearing my forged signature and referred the case for prosecution. Without my credit supporting the refinancing package, my father's company defaulted. Its projects entered receivership. Investigators discovered altered financial statements and other questionable signatures. My father initially blamed Nathan for the electronic paperwork. Nathan responded by producing emails in which my father told employees to reconstruct missing approvals. My mother admitted witnessing documents she had never seen me sign, although her lawyer claimed she had been manipulated. Archived messages showed she helped create the false story about my mental health. The fake lease was only one part of a larger pattern. My father accepted a plea agreement after prosecutors presented the recordings, messages, financial records, locksmith footage, and his own statements at my door. He received prison time, restitution obligations, and a prohibition against managing fiduciary assets after his release. Some viewers wanted a longer sentence, but justice was not one perfect punishment. It was the removal of every system that had protected him. He lost his company, his house, his position in the community, and most importantly, the ability to claim nothing had happened. Nathan avoided prison by cooperating, but cooperation did not restore his life. He admitted knowing my signature had been used and participating in the plan to occupy the manor. He received restitution orders, community service, and financial monitoring. His reputation collapsed, and the friends who admired his lifestyle vanished once the accounts were frozen. 6 months later, he emailed me. He said Dad pressured him. The company was supposed to recover, and everyone believed I had more money than I needed. He said he assumed I would eventually forgive them because I always had. That was the only honest sentence. I replied, I am not available. Then I blocked him. My mother moved into a condominium owned by a cousin who had once laughed at my father's joke about me returning for free food. She told relatives I had destroyed the family for attention. Some believed her. Others had watched the footage and stopped pretending. Her letters began with blame, changed into negotiation, and eventually became sentimental. She included childhood photographs and stories about happy Christmas mornings. In every story, she remembered herself as loving and me as distant. She never mentioned the forged medical letter or asked what might have happened if they had successfully taken my home. Instead, she wrote, "A mother's mistakes should not erase a lifetime of love." I did not reply. Neglect was not her only mistake. The deeper wound was her insistence that love could exist without respect, truth, or consent. The damaged doorframe remained in place until the case ended. Later, I gave the broken wood to a sculptor in the first residency program. She transformed it into a piece called Entry Denied, showing a splintered doorway surrounding a bronze woman holding her own key. It now stands in the main gallery. The residency opened the following autumn. Our first group included a photographer rebuilding after financial abuse, a ceramicist whose parents had controlled her income, and a writer who had spent years caring for relatives who later removed her from an inheritance. Each woman received a private room, studio access, and a consultation with an independent attorney. We did not call the program a rescue. Rescue suggests freedom is handed down by someone powerful. We called it a residency because every woman arrived with her own talent, judgment, and authority. On the first Christmas after my father's sentencing, we held an exhibition in the ballroom. The manor was filled with people who were invited because they were wanted, not because they were useful. Marcus arrived carrying a narrow box. Inside was one of the illustrations I had made for my family at 22. I thought it was lost, but he had found it years earlier in a stack of discarded frames. The drawing showed a house with every window illuminated except one. "I thought you might want it back," he said. I studied the dark window. "I want to change it." In the studio, I painted a small figure climbing through the dark window with a lantern. Then I added a larger building in the distance with its doors open. Later, the residents asked me to speak before dinner. I retrieved the letter I had written across 5 years. I wrote this to people who would have argued with every sentence, I said. Tonight, I am reading the final page to people who understand why it matters. I began. Dear Mom and Dad, for years, I believed being forgotten meant I had failed to become unforgettable. I tried harder, gave more, spoke less, and forgave faster. None of it changed you because my pain was not an accident. Nathan was allowed to need everything. I was praised for needing nothing. You called that strength because it made abandoning me easier. When I bought this house, you did not see proof that I had built a life. You saw an asset that had escaped your control. You came with false papers because you believed being my parents placed you above my consent. You called me unstable because the truth was dangerous to you. I used to dream you would finally remember me. I never imagined freedom would begin when I stopped needing you to. I am not reading this to ask for remorse. I am reading it to close the door you tried to break down. When I finished, the ceramicist raised her glass. To owning the key. Everyone repeated it. That night, I stood on the balcony while laughter traveled through the open doors. For most of my life, Christmas had been a test I could never pass. Now I understood that being remembered by people who value only your usefulness is not love. Sometimes their sudden attention is the final warning that you have built something worth protecting. My father remembered me when he needed my signature. My mother remembered me when she needed my silence. Nathan remembered me when he needed my house. But by then, I had remembered myself. The following morning, I received a letter in my father's handwriting. You think you won? It began. But blood has a long memory. There was no apology, only another attempt to turn biology into a threat. I sent it to Marcus and the authorities, then continued serving breakfast in the courtyard. Life did not pause to wait for my father to understand it. Months later, a producer contacted me about a documentary on identity theft within families. I agreed only if it included practical warning signs, unexplained credit inquiries, mail sent to old addresses, pressure to sign vague documents, relatives demanding financial access, and claims that boundaries prove mental instability. The documentary ended with footage of the manor's repaired entrance. The new door was reinforced with steel. Above it, I installed stained glass depicting a woman carrying a lantern away from a windowless house. Viewers asked whether live streaming had destroyed the chance of reconciliation. My answer remained the same. Reconciliation had been impossible long before the cameras turned on. The cameras only made denial harder. The manor did not heal me by itself. Money did not erase the child waiting beside an empty Christmas tree. What changed me was the decision to stop negotiating with people who needed my powerlessness as proof of love. On the second Christmas, we expanded the residency to include workshops on financial literacy, property rights, credit protection, and professional confidence. Independence requires more than inspiration. It requires knowledge, evidence, community, and the courage to trust your own memory. My father once believed the broken door would prove I could not stop him. Instead, it became the first artwork visitors saw when they entered a house he would never control. He had forgotten me every Christmas until I owned something he wanted. Then he remembered too late. So tell me honestly, if your parents remembered you only when they needed your money, your name, or your home, would you give them another chance? Or close the door for good?
We hope the story stayed with you after the final scene. This video is entirely fictional and created only for education, entertainment, and dramatic storytelling. We hope it reminds you that you can care about someone and still recognize that staying connected to them is no longer healthy for you. Love does not require you to keep sacrificing your emotional well-being or someone who refuses to change.